Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Bryan Jones is joining us talking about the best practices for remote operations, both emergency and long-term. That's coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, keeping you connected with your community with support and webinars. Online at nautel.com/webinars. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we're talking about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. And look at that! It only took almost 500 episodes for me to get that together. There it is. There's the light bulb at the top of the tower. And that really is from the top. That came from the 800-foot level of an 800-foot tower, the very top of an 800-foot tower. And I only know that it came from the top because that's the beacon that had the least amount of paint on it. And if you're a tower climber, you don't really want to carry paint to the 800-foot level if you can help it. So, this paint there might be a bit scant. Just saying. Anyway. Hey, welcome in. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. This is where the Telos Alliance supplies me with some gear to play with, have fun, do a little support work with and experimentation, and see if we can fit square pegs into round holes. We do a lot of that, helping people get their, get done what they want to get done, just maybe not the way they thought it was going to get done, but get done anyway. And thanks a lot to the Telos Alliance for giving me a little time off on Thursdays to do this show and to bring you, my fellow broadcast engineers, lots of good engineering information. So that's here from Nashville, where we have a beautiful day going on. I bet Chris Tobin's here. Sounds like it. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I am here. I'm in our performance space at the radio station, where we've done some streaming events, so it's been fun. So yeah, doing well.
All right. Good to see you very much. And you're going to be part of this show, Chris, because we're talking about some of the best practices for remote operations. That's coming up. We'll introduce our guest in just a minute. He's an expert. I mean, he's done a lot of this, getting broadcast engineers, helping them to get remote talent set up to control and listen to and to send audio to the radio station so they can actually run the place from home. And we're discovering that that's very, very doable. And we kind of always knew that, but it's very doable. This show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by our friends at Nautel. And I want to tell you about something going on at Nautel, and that is their continuing Transmitter Tech Talk series. They're continuing their interactive, and this is key, it's interactive, Transmission Talk Tuesday roundtables. It's not a webinar, it's a roundtable, and you actually get to ask questions and participate in these. The next one, of course, we had one this past Tuesday, but the next one is Tuesday, the 30th of June at 12 noon Eastern time. So figure your time from there, but noon Eastern time. And this Tuesday, it's going to be all about customer service, or getting good customer service from your transmitter manufacturer. They invite your input, your questions, hey, even your complaints if you got complaints. So you might have you might need to call somebody out on something and see how to get that solved. Multiple Nautel customer service technicians are going to be joining Jeff Welton for this roundtable discussion. They're also going to be telling war stories. I remember that time when I was helping out this guy and he was on top of a mountain, or he was in a flood, or whatever it may be. But there will be some war stories told this Tuesday. It's your chance to ask the service techs questions, pat them on the back if they've done something awesome. And Nautel will also cover how you can best help them help you. We've talked about that before on this show. Nautel will give you their perspective on that. One information will make their task easier when it comes to providing you with timely assistance. So you want to register for this. They need to know how many people, to provide sandwiches for. Go to nautel.com/webinars, nautel.com/webinars. And this is the Transmission Talk Tuesday Roundtable. More things are coming up, too, in coming months. Next month and, July and August, we'll tell you about those. But get yourself registered. Just go do it right now. Register for this at nautel.com/webinars. Chris, have you had a chance to watch some of these? I've tuned into a couple of them.
Yes, absolutely. I've been enjoying a few of them. I got to catch up. They've been good. It's a lot of fun. You do get to hear stuff and think about things that you didn't think about before, and I think it's well worth it. And Tuesday should be a fun one. That should definitely be a good one.
And the reason we kind of hit this really hard is because Tuesday's next week. So, if you don't do it now, you're going to forget about it. So you can even ignore the next minute while I introduce Bryan Jones. Sorry, Bryan. And go get yourself registered for the webinar. Bryan will be here for an hour, or you can register right after we're done. And after that, maybe he's already hung up the phone and gone away. Bryan Jones, my colleague.
Gave up on you. I gave up on you a long time ago, Kirk.
That's good. That's good. As well, you should. Bryan Jones is here. Hey, Bryan, welcome into the show.
Hey, good. Thanks, Kirk. Pleasure to be here. It's like you, I appreciate my employer giving me the opportunity to take a few minutes in the afternoon to join you guys here. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
Well, I think we're going to do a lot of good here. And the tease for what's coming up is we're going to be talking about the best practices for remote operations, right? And a lot of us had to scramble at the last minute with COVID-19 coming on, and our governors, our mayors, president, anybody saying, hey, you got to stay home. You guys can't gather anymore. You can't do your morning show at the radio station and have a bunch of people in and out of there. You're going to figure out how to do it from home. And actually that was probably our corporate people telling us that. So, Bryan, there's emergency best practices, there's long-term best practices, and there are several interesting ways to skin this cat, so to speak, to get broadcasting done from home. And we're going to pay special attention in this show to doing it long-term safely or short-term safely with regard to IT practices. So Bryan will be telling us about that in just a minute. Hey, Chris, our sponsor for This Week in Radio Tech, one of them is our friends at Angry Audio. Chris, I love this box. This is just an amazing piece of gear. And, Bluetooth itself ain't that amazing. It's been around for a while, although it's been upgraded and upgraded and upgraded in terms of security. This, of course, has the very latest Bluetooth security in it. This is the Bluetooth audio gadget from Angry Audio. And this is especially good for the topic we're talking about today, and that's broadcasting from home or from temporary studios where you may not have good phone lines. You may not have your usual request lines coming in, although, we can tell you how to remote control the ones you have. But if you want to get a phone call on the air right there at your little mixing console in your home, this is one great way to do it, and that's the Bluetooth audio gadget, because what you're using is your own cell phone. Now, I'm not suggesting that you give out your cell phone number as the new request line. I'm not sure you want to do that. But if you want to get the mayor on the air, if you want to get a VIP on the air, you want to get an artist on the air, get them on your phone, get them on FaceTime or a regular phone call, and then attach your phone wirelessly, Bluetooth, to this Bluetooth audio gadget. You'll get the best possible quality out of it because it automatically selects the right profile, whether you're on the phone for a two-way conversation or whether you're playing audio out of your phone, out of your smartphone. Maybe you've got a lot of songs in there, or maybe you've got videos and you want to play the audio from that. It selects the high-quality profile for that. So check this thing out, the Bluetooth audio gadget. On the back, it's got all your pro connectors. There you go. And look at that, an attached power cord. By golly, you're not pulling that out accidentally. So this is a great thing to have on your desk next to your audio console at home, the Bluetooth audio gadget. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, that you can go to the website, angryaudio.com, check out all their cool stuff. But you remember, Angry Audio is your source for these things, the Studio Hub adapters. This is the Studio Hub adapter cable, RJ45, and this will take a Cat5 cable and go to your audio node, whatever that may be, or your audio console, or whatever audio device it is that goes by the Studio Hub standard, one of the most popular standards in the world. When you order one of these, ask for one of these for free. You get your free Cat5 cable. It's shielded, and the label here even has the whole Studio Hub pinout on it. Oops, upside down. There we go. So get this. It's absolutely free when you order this, and you ask for it, but you got to ask for it. Tell them Chris Tobin sent you. That's probably better than Kirk Harnack sent you. All right, the three of us are here today to talk about best practices for remote operations. And Chris, I'll start with you because one of the things that we know can happen easily is engineers in a hurry can make some IT mistakes. Engineers can, hey, I got to make this work. Let's just open up the DMZ of our router and put our remote control computer in the DMZ of the router, and we'll be able to just use VNC and get into it, and voila. where we can remote control ourselves. And let's take our audio codec that we might have, doesn't even matter what brand it is, and open up some ports, maybe they're default ports to the public internet. And that may not be a great idea. Oh, we need to control that audio codec. Let's just put it in the DMZ as well of our router. And bad idea there. And I know there's people that have done that because you can do an internet search for devices on the internet using shodan.io, and you can find all kinds of broadcast devices that are just in the clear. Bad practice, and that's not the kind of remote operations we're talking about. Chris, maybe you got a thing to say or two before we jump in with Bryan Jones about this doing things in emergency because you think you have to, and doing it wrong can get you in trouble.
Well, I mean, real basic stuff. If you're going to do remote access, look at a firewall VPN approach. Consider that, and once you work with that, all those details, you have a better shape. VPNs are very handy if you get the right ones. Make sure the resources are available for the VPN router. Don't just get any cheap thing that you buy. Put some money into it, and then that way you can connect and have security and a little more ease of operation here on your network. Use VLANs, sort of who gets in and out and where, and permission authentication, and off you go. Does it work? Sure, but in the long run, it saves you a lot of trouble when things go sideways.
So that's what we're going to be talking about here is some of the differences in operation. Yeah, I know. If you got a bug out, you got to use what you have. But that's why we brought Bryan Jones in. Bryan is my colleague with the Telos Alliance, and he's advised a lot of folks who from, oh my God, here's what I got, and I got to get on the air. I got to get my morning guy on the air, and I've got 45 minutes to do it. What can we do? Versus the long-term approach, hey, guess what? Corporate says our morning guy is going to be working from his house at least through December. And they got a couple dollars to spend to make sure this goes well. What can we do? So, Bryan, that's kind of the setup. Why don't we talk about the former first? I want to talk about emergency operations when you don't have the time or ability to buy new routers, to get things set up the way they should be, or maybe you, the engineer, me, the engineer, I don't know all the right best practices. I got to hire an IT person, and guess what? They're kind of busy right now with setting up everybody else for COVID stay at home. Talk to us about emergency operations, getting into the station remotely, but doing it securely in ways that work and almost anybody can do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's it harkens me back to when you had Rob Bertrand from WAMU on the show. He kind of alluded to this very thing, and that when COVID shut, there's a segment of people who have things planned out. They had planned to operate their stations remotely or to allow certain talent to come in, and for whatever reason they're on maternity leave, and so they're working from home or whatever the case may be. But when COVID hit, everybody didn't have a choice, right? So Rob sort of alluded to this. It's like, oh my God, I have a station full of people that now need to work from home. And how do I do that? Do I have the technical know-how to do it? Do we have the technical infrastructure to support those kind of connections? And there's a lot of cases where, Chris, you said it, right? People just said, I don't have a choice. I'm going to stick this thing on the public internet. I'm going to give my people access to it, and we're just going to deal with it as it comes. And as you can imagine, that's a bad idea. So I think what we're seeing is that the people that planned it out had a pretty good idea. They had some security in place. They had routers or firewalls that were smart enough, but they just weren't ready, right? So they had to kind of here inside Telos, we call it pivot, right? It's like COVID has really made us pivot and rethink about what we're doing, right? So so my router has VPN clients, right? It allows me to connect by VPN, but does it have enough, right? So maybe it had 5 or 10 or whatever it allowed, but when you have 50 people that are working from home and you only have 5 VPN licenses, what are you going to do? Right? How do you get all of those people connected?
Before we get into that to me seems like more of a proper long-term, unless you're set up for it. If you're set up for it, great. Then long-term becomes right. Available immediately. I wanted to point out something that you said earlier, and when this COVID thing has started happening, and Paul Montoya, for example, and others that we've talked to mentioned this as well.
Right.
if you want to remote control your radio station, and one way to do that, of course, is to simply use a known decent service like TeamViewer or Log Me In, or I like dwservice.net. Not many people have heard of that one. I like it a lot. It's got one little drawback, but I like it. In other words, you've got these ways that you can pretty securely get into your computers in the radio station. And then, and my point kind of is this: if you've got some software that lets you run your audio console, or you've got some software that lets you make basic switching between sources, and as an Axia user, I've got several of those ways to do things. If you've got remote access to, for example, a program called Pathfinder or some other programs that do similar things from other manufacturers, you don't necessarily have to run those programs at your house. You can run those programs on the network in the radio station, where maybe they're using a lot of different connections, a lot of different ports. Maybe they need more connectivity than is convenient for you at home to provide back to the station on a quick notice basis. So my point there is, use a remote control product that's already out there, and remote control something in the radio station. I think a lot of folks already get this. We've had guests on the show here who remote control their audio console from literally hundreds of miles away during high school football games, because they can't find anybody to work at the radio station during a high school football game in a small town. So people have been doing this for years, but my point is, this is pretty secure. It doesn't require port forwarding. It doesn't require opening up ports or anything, or pinholes, as some people call them. It doesn't require that because you're using services that typically have a rendezvous server. So you've got outgoing connections and reciprocal incoming connections, but those ports aren't open to just any Tom, Dick, and Harry in the outside world. So I unless I'm horribly misinformed, and you can tell me if I am, services like TeamViewer and Log Me In, various remote desktop services, dwservice.net, where you have a constant connection from the potential client you want to connect to and yourself. This works a lot like some of our products, like a Zip One, for example. These are pretty secure connections. Nobody else can really jump into these. People can try war driving or your password over and over again, or your connection number, your client number, but they're not going to be. They're all encrypted. They're not going to be able to see what's going on. Okay, so that's my speech. Anything there that you disagree with or want to add to?
No, not at all. Those programs are great because they typically provide an encrypted connection. You're not typing in passwords and usernames and logging onto your domains in your office just with passwords and stuff that are in the clear. There's been a number of broadcasters who've been hit with ransomware, and so they are very conscientious about those sorts of things. But at the same time, they recognize we still have to have, right? You can't have your security so tight that nobody can operate the radio station, because in a pandemic like this, they don't have a choice. So they're forced to think about things like that. And where you might otherwise say, TeamViewer, GoToAssist, Log Me In, those kinds of things are just not allowed. Well, then you've got to come up with other options. And so a lot of the phone calls that we got are, what are my options? Oh my God, I can't get into the radio station. What options do I have?
Yeah. Well, I just want to give people the some assurance, at least from my perspective, that these remote control options are secure enough. And most of them have gone through iterations of becoming more secure. And I remember one of the problems with TeamViewer was that the remote ID, the computer ID that would be automatically assigned by TeamViewer, was just a numerical value. And so obviously somebody could write a script to work with TeamViewer and could try different numbers. Hey, let's try 952,854 and try that one. And if I got a response, well, then now I can try different passwords. I'll try all the usual, dictionary passwords like password or monkey or 12345, right? Or password. Yeah. So that was a weakness in that TeamViewer just assigned numerical values. At least that was a perceived weakness. I don't know how real it was. Seems real enough. And so different systems may have different exploits or weaknesses, but these companies also tend to work to fix those things. So I don't know. I've never worked for a company that totally disallowed something like TeamViewer, Log Me In. Of course, the danger is once you're in, well, you've got the keys. You can hunt all around the network. So you don't want unauthorized people getting in. You do want strong passwords on any remote application that you've got to get in. But my real point here is that for running your radio station, this is a quick and easy way. It should be fairly painless to have apps running in the radio station that you would then remote control, rather than taking that app out to the outside world where maybe it's a bit more difficult. Maybe a bunch of ports that need to be opened and that kind of thing. So one of those apps, tell you what, let's talk about one of these ways that you've helped people, Bryan, is to help them to run Soft Surface from Axia. And that Soft Surface, I think, was originally designed to be run on the same network that you already had in your broadcast facility. It could replace an audio console or it could remote control an audio console, but it was designed not necessarily to be run on a different network across the internet outside the broadcast facility. Am I on base with that?
Yeah, that's right. That would be, I'd either be sitting in the same studio with you, maybe on the other side of the console, and I've got a mirror image of the console that's on a computer screen, and I can see what you're controlling. I can control my volume, turn my microphones on and off. But then what happens is, and you got to remember, Soft Surface got some age on it, right? We've been doing audio over IP now for as long as I've been here, and that's been almost 10 years now. It's been, closer to 20 probably. So, nobody thought, hey, I'm going to write this Soft Surface software, and I'm going to pretend like somebody's going to use the internet to connect to the station and control it, because at that time, well, what's the internet? Dial-up?
Yeah,
You're not gonna do that over dial-up, right?
Yes,
right.
That's true.
So Soft Surface was really, we've always sort of had the ability to remote control the console, right? But it goes way beyond just the console these days.
So I take it you've advised people, for example, I've got some Axia gear at my radio stations, and of course thousands of others do too. And all of a sudden I got to remote control a console. I'm guessing your quickest advice would be to, Kirk, put Smart Surface on, but install it at the radio station itself on a PC there. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Soft Surface. And then
we don't sell Smart Surface anymore.
I'm sorry, Soft Surface.
Yeah,
I've been around this a long time.
You have.
I sold a bunch of Smart Surfaces. So use Soft Surface, but run it at the radio station and then go remote control that computer from the outside
quick and dirty.
World. That's quick and dirty, and it works, and that's how a number of people are doing this. Now, that said, if you want to run a program like Soft Surface, which wasn't itself designed intrinsically to run across the internet, what are some of the things that a person would need to do? First of all, call support, but you give me an idea on ports and so forth. And I guess there's two ways to do it. I'm sorry, long question. You can VPN, and these things kind of take care of themselves, or you can open the appropriate ports in both directions and get that control.
Yeah, with regard to Soft Surface, that's exactly what happened. Either people would do what you said, right? So the quick way is run it locally on a computer and then use TeamViewer or GoToAssist or Log Me In or even a VNC connection to control that console right there. The nice thing about that is that the software and the console have a very reliable connection. Right? We don't have to worry about dropping bits on the internet, because that's one of the downsides of doing remote control and broadcasting remotely, is the entire internet is predicated on non-guaranteed delivery mechanisms. Right. I have no guarantee that you're going to receive the packet that I'm sending you. And so when we're on the local network, we have much better control over that. But when I go out over the internet, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. Right? How good is my connection? How many people are on? It's a lot better than it used to be. But if you remember early DSL connections, depending on how many people they subscribed on there and how many people were using it, things would slow way down. And so you may slow down to the point where your connection between your Soft Surface, which you're running on your computer at home, and your console at the studio, the connection is just so bad that it drops the connection, and you find you're always having to click that reconnect button to get things going again.
I'm responsible for about 14 radio stations, and at most of them, I persistently watch the quality of the internet connection by, I do it in a basic way. I ping each one every 60 seconds, 24/7, but I've got graphs here in my office of, how good is our internet connection, whether it's Greenville, Mississippi, Lihue, Hawaii, or Pongo Pongo, American Samoa. I can get an idea. Can my computer get there? And if it's out for a while, of course, I get a graph that says, hey, you got no internet there. Point is, I'm watching a connection right now that one of our STLs is on, and it loses packets. It really does. Mm-hmm. So the soft surface and many other such programs were designed for a very assured connection with the equipment that they're controlling, and they weren't designed for lost packets. So running soft surface at the studio assures that, hey, it's on the same network, things are going to be good. Where you want your packet loss, if you want packet loss, is your remote control of that computer, because things like LogMeIn, TeamViewer, they were designed for the occasional or even frequent lost packets, and you just get a blip on the screen, or you got to move the button again that you thought you clicked, and no harm, no foul other than that, right?
For sure, and it keeps those kinds of things in your control. But what we're learning is that we have to rely on other people. Right. Yeah. We've got to use the public internet. And there's two things that are challenging. Number one, it's one thing to control the console. So the internet's great. I have commercially available internet at my home. Because both my wife and I work from home. We have business internet. So very seldom is it ever down. Very seldom does it ever not perform like they said it would. Right, so it's a connection that I can count on, and I always story for another day. Remind me to tell you about the football games that ran through my house one year. You may already know the story.
I've told that story a few times. I have in private company, but yeah.
So given a reliable internet connection, you can really almost be there. And there's two things we need to handle. We need to handle control, but the bigger one is audio. How do I get my microphone to the studio in a high quality fashion? And then how do I get audio back into my headphones in some kind of a short enough, short enough time frame, right? It's hard for you and me and Chris to have a three-way conversation or even a two-way conversation if there's a lot of latency. And
right.
Really, the average conversation can't tolerate much more than about a half a second of latency before we're always stepping on top of each other.
Exactly. So, actually, we're going to be covering some of that information in the second half of our show. So I really just wanted to drive home the fact that it's perfectly okay to run apps in your radio station, assuming you got a bug out. Run apps there and remote control those apps through standard means that are available now. And you know what? Most of the time that actually works okay. The audio portion you just mentioned, of course, there's all kinds of audio codec solutions available that will run right over the same internet pipes that you're using to remote control your console at the radio station. Codecs like the one right behind me here from Telos, Zip One. There's certainly codecs from Tyline, from Comrex, and other brands too. And there's even solutions out there like Clean Feed, other things. And all of these have varying amounts of delay, but they all have modes that they will work acceptably for you and result in at least being able to do a show and not have excessive delay. So we know that can work. In the next part of the show, Bryan, I want to move toward defining some of these things better. For example, you say VPN. A lot of people think, oh yeah, VPN. I hear that advertised, NordVPN or ExpressVPN, and that's not what you're talking about. So.
Correct.
We gotta cover that because it's a really important thing. It ain't as easy as putting your credit card down and signing up for it and installing a client on your computer. The kind of VPN we're talking about that you might need. We're also going to talk about. Let's say that you've got a phone system. You've got in our case, a Telos phone system with these amazing VSET controllers. They look like phones. They're really system controllers that if you want to remote that, how would you go about doing that? So you can actually put callers on the air just like you would at the radio station from home, punch those buttons. And we will talk about port forwarding and maybe if you have to do that, how to make that a bit more secure. So Bryan Jones will be coming up. Also, Chris Tobin is going to talk more about his solution, which I think is really interesting that he did for WBGO in Newark, New Jersey. So Kirk Harnack here, and Chris Tobin's along. Hey, Chris, did you make it back? Are you logged in, buddy?
Yes, I am. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh.
Just the whole iPhone just went dark.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm back. Yeah.
The frame rate's kind of low, so I was wondering if there was some internet trouble there or at the studio.
There shouldn't be. I noticed that too. Let me see.
Yeah.
I can always reconnect while doing a break.
Okay. All right. So Chris, we covered some things that we pretty well know, and maybe you have had to do this with other stations, but I'll say it again at the point of beating the dead horse. It's perfectly okay to do this remote access via existing methods, but that may not be ideal. It may not give you the brief delay, the shortness of delay that you're looking for in controlling radio programs, which are very time-based, and you want one thing to happen right after another, so you don't have dead air spaces. So we'll talk about how to get things better over the long term coming up. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store. The website, bgs.cc, and we'll be right back after this announcement.
Yo, what's up? Live from NAB 2018. Hey, it's Caden. You need to check out Wheatstone and Vox Pro 7.1. The upgrades are amazing. If you're a jock, if you're a talent, producer, whatever, morning show, everyone knows Vox Pro, everyone uses Vox Pro, everyone loves Vox Pro. But now the features for this year, 2018, on 7.1 are amazing. If you're using version 4.5.6 and you go to 7, this is exactly what you're missing right here. The features are a game changer. It's going to cut down your editing time by like 80% depending on what you use Vox Pro for. And with version 7.1, introducing unlimited Practic button bars right here, hotkeys right here. I'm going to show you coming out of a song.
Bad things. It's a lot of bad things that they wish and I wish and I wish and I wish.
So you're coming out of your song?
Yeah.
Start your next song right here. It's basically an entire production room right on Vox Pro. So it's the Vox Pro we know and love with a ton more features. And now this is the ultimate game changer right here. Effect macros. So instead of hitting your effects button bar and going up here using your mouse for every effect, you do it right here with one click of the mouse, and you're going to cut down your editing time by about 80% without even touching this new sexy black controller. Check it out right here, Wheatstone Vox Pro 7.1 at NAB in Vegas 2018.
Vox Pro is pretty amazing. You can get those at Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc, bgs.cc. All righty. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack and Chris Tobin. We're talking with Bryan Jones. He is a support specialist at the Telos Alliance, and a lot of folks have been calling him. When we had to bug out of our radio stations back end of February, early March, mid-March, people on the phone with Bryan saying, "What do I do? How do I make this work?" And a lot of good advice then. But now we're thinking more about long-term advice. And Bryan, I'd love to cover this topic of VPN. Not every broadcast engineer is an IT expert. I've got a certification, but I still don't consider myself to be an expert, and I know that plenty of other engineers are not too. We hear, Bryan, the term VPN thrown around a whole lot, and typically it's consumer-oriented VPN. So that if you are, let's say, a salesperson out on the road, and you're in a Starbucks, and you need to connect back to your company, and you need to just surf the web without anybody peering in on what you're doing. And it's possible to do some pretty amazing peering in, even on supposedly secure Wi-Fi. You want to use a VPN, but that's a road warrior type VPN where you have a client on your laptop and you're connecting into a router somewhere and keeping your connection private there locally. And that's useful for some things. In fact, maybe let's even think of a few things that is useful for, Bryan. One of them that we use at our stations, at every one of my radio stations, we can VPN into the router. In other words, so our Windows computers have VPN clients in them. We click one button, and all of a sudden, our laptops, our computers, are part of the network back at the radio station as if we're local there. That makes it easier to do things like VNC. It makes it easier to do things that would require us to be on the network. And one of those things, for example, is to look back at our router settings. So if we're in the network that way, it becomes pretty easy. So that's one use of a consumer VPN. In this case, it's set up in the router, but still it's a client situation. Can you add to that? People dialing in with their laptop to be a VPN with the radio station.
Yeah, for sure. The VPN software really is like, you make a good point. Hopefully people get this, but there are probably people that don't. When you see things advertised, if you watch YouTube or Facebook or whatever, you'll see a lot of VPN software advertised. NordVPN you mentioned, right? That's not providing you with a secure connection to your office, right? If you need access. NordVPN it's essentially masking your location, right? It's running you through a server. If you're in a lot of places, you can't. If you're in a different country and you want to stream from Netflix, for example, a lot of things on Netflix and subscription, based web services they're region limited, right? If you're in England, you can't stream Netflix from the US, but with something like NordVPN, they'll make you think that you're in the US, but it isn't going to give you that private access, to the things on your network. I'll give you a good example of a VPN. Here, I have a need as a support person. I have a need to look up. Somebody calls in, they need to send something in for repair, or they need to know if it's under warranty. I need to be able to look up when that sale happened. So I need secure access to our back-end business systems. Well, we don't put that on the public internet for obvious security reasons. So I have to VPN. I connect a piece of software into our company, and that essentially, just like you said, Kirk, it puts me on the same network as if there is a long network cable running from our office in Cleveland to my home in Vancouver, Washington. And so that's where the VPN comes in handy, but it doesn't have to just be for the business system, right? A lot of radio stations will have, they'll have VPN, and the engineer or the IT people will use it like you do, right? I just need to get in and check on something. I need to restart this computer, or I need to run VNC to make a change, to make a route change. Mm-hmm. And so that's where VPN comes in handy, but you got to have a router that supports it, and you got to have somebody with the technical expertise to set it up. In a lot of cases, those VPN licenses are not free. Because I work from home, I have a real firewall here made by SonicWall, but they charge for those VPN connections. You get 2, but when you kick everybody out of the radio station and you need 20, what are you going to do then? That's when people start I'll just port forward the ports that I need to the public internet, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, well, we'll look at that in a second, but I want to follow up a bit on the licensing thing. And I know different router manufacturers have different revenue models. For example, yep. I'm a fan myself of the MikroTik routers. They can do the Road Warrior VPN, where I VPN into the MikroTik router with the standard VPN facilities that are built into Windows, for example, or into a Mac. Yep. But they can also do a point-to-point, hardware-to-hardware VPN if you know how to set it up. And for me, I ain't figured that out yet. So that I could hire a professional to do that for me, or I could sift through a lot more manuals. So that's kind of a do-it-yourself, but they are capable of point-to-point VPN. You're using a SonicWall, and they have a different business model. It's absolutely doable, even with a wizard or by getting the support at SonicWall to do it for you, which they charge for. But you can absolutely have your SonicWall router more or less permanently connected, if you want to, let's say, Telos's headquarters, to their router, and have that full-time connection always there. And broadcasters like banking or anybody else, any other business with locations, can certainly do that. The good thing about that is, let's say that you want to do something at your home that normally would require some device to be on the radio station's network.
Right.
You can have, if you just client VPN or Road Warrior VPN, as I would call it, into your radio station, that puts your laptop on the network. It doesn't put other devices on your home network on that same network. That only happens if you do router to router VPN. And that's, I want to make clear, that's not by getting service from NordVPN or ExpressVPN. Nothing wrong with those services. That's just a different kind of VPN. So if you would, Bryan, tell me what you get, what the benefit is of router to router, point to point VPN. So I'm a morning guy at my radio stations. They've brought me some equipment. It's supposed to be at the station, but it's at my house instead, like a phone or even an Axie audio console at my home, remote controlling a mix engine back there. How does a VPN help make that happen? And again, it's got to be router to router, nailed up VPN.
Yeah, and you're touching on what a lot of people, didn't realize. They called up and they said, "Hey, I've got my, my Telos VSET. I want my call screener is now working at home, and I need that person to be able to answer the phone, put calls on hold, and have a little chat with the people that are on the air to say, hey, Kirk is holding on line one, and he wants to talk about the price of tea in China, or whatever it is that he wants to talk about." And so we'll have the conversation about VPN, and they'll say, yep, I got this VPN software right here. It's on my computer. I'm ready to go. But then when you explain that only puts your computer on with the rest of the network, that's a horse of a different color. So the difference between the VPN client that runs on the computer and having a router that supports VPN, the router will put your entire home network on whatever the business network is. So if Kirk, if you and I both shared a router that could do that, and I told my router to make a VPN connection to you, I now have full access to your network, and you now have full access to mine, unless we firewall that off. So a lot of businesses, a lot of radio stations don't want to do that. You got 50 people at home. It would be very dangerous to put 50 people's homes with nailed up VPNs for their entire home network, because the kids are all home from school, right? They're on their iPads, they're downloading videos, they're doing all kinds of things. It is a security nightmare. So when you start explaining that, the light bulb comes on in somebody's head and said, okay, this is going to be more difficult than we thought it would be. And that's honestly, and I know we're kind of running short. I'm always surprised at how fast an hour goes here, but what I'm hoping, Kirk, is that all of this, there are billions of great stories about how people got on the air and stayed on the air, but I'm really hoping that this COVID-19 really changes the conversation between, I told you this morning, right? We want to make products that people want to buy, right? And I think that this is going to make people rethink how they do things on a day-to-day basis. How do I get people connected to my station so that I can talk on the air? There should be no reason in this day and age, with the right products and the right security, why you and me and Chris couldn't all be sitting at home with an HTML interface of our console, and it should be no different than us sitting in the studio. But without some thought and some right products, that doesn't just happen by magic. And so I'm really hopeful that this whole COVID-19 thing will change that conversation, and that people will rethink, and we can all have a conversation together about how are we going to do this. And honestly, and you and I talked about this, Kirk, I'd be interested to see, we talked about Chris doing some remote stuff with his stations there. Do you think that this is going to permanently change the way stations operate daily? Will this be more of a new norm, or are we just going to have to figure out how to be prepared for the next time a pandemic hits?
That's a great question for Chris, because my little radio stations don't have that many people working in them anyway. And so our salespeople have had to schedule their coming and going, but our on-air staff is pretty minimal. We do a lot of remote voice tracking anyway. That's not real time. We do some voice tracking that is just-in-time voice tracking. So it's topical but it's still, the files get put in there sometime in the hour before they're going to play. So we do voice tracking a number of different ways. Chris, Tobin, though, you're in a major market there. Thinking about this question of is this changing the way we're going to operate permanently, or do you think in your situation, I'm gonna take a guess. Chris, you tell me if I'm wrong, because I may be wrong, that the people at your radio station, the culture there, is going to really want to get back together as soon as they can and broadcast again as friends and family from studios with which they're familiar. But Chris, you tell me what you're looking at.
Oh, absolutely. We've discussed it a couple of times. The way we operate with the musicians that come in, we do live events, tape events. We do a lot of club events, outdoor. Yeah, coming back to the radio station, definitely, it's going to happen, and it'll help us. But this incident has helped us to realize that because of technology, as Bryan pointed out, we can actually do many other things that we didn't think was possible, say, 5 years ago. So, yes, my announcers are operating on off location, off site. We've got about 18 voice tracking connections coming and going through VPN links to a server setup, and we're doing voice tracking and live inserts from time to time. But it's given us the opportunity to look at that and go, wait a minute, what if today was a normal day and we're doing a fund drive, and we like to have the announcer at a location that in the past required 2 board ops, a producer, someone to pull CDs, someone to do this, someone to do that. Now they can do it with a laptop at the venue and actually do stuff with the event. These are the things we're looking at, and actually we're going to be building out a few infrastructure pieces to make that happen. So that's where we're going. But yeah, we put together something real fast. It's working, and we've been on the air and had I'd say maybe 2 or 3 hiccups that we weren't aware of because of the workflow. And so far, so good. 3 months going, and hard pressed to know that we're off site.
Would you mind describing again for us how your system works? Because I think it's not exactly novel. Other people have sort of done the same thing, but you're not even remote controlling audio consoles with your solution. Tell us, if you would, a bit about what the workflow is for the jocks and where the automation is.
Okay, sure. So first of all, just for context, here at WBGO, up until this event, all the music originated off CDs. And we have a almost 10,000 CD library of jazz music, jazz influence, everything. And the reason we're on CD is because the announcers and the programming folks, every hour is programmed for a certain theme, a certain style, a certain genre. And if you're a jazz enthusiast, even if you're classical music, there's so many variations. And to do automation was, at the time, almost impossible. The metadata wasn't available on all the disks, everything else. It was just a mess. So they stuck with what we had. Now comes this little event that puts everybody off site, and we have to quickly automate. And we did. We put together a music library on a disk, on a hard drive that is, and purchased an automation system. The automation system we're using, just so it's proper, is DJB Radio. And in about 8 days, we put together an automation system that allowed me to do internet voice tracking with our announcers. So the goal was to have almost real time or in the moment voice tracking, because many of us, and I know I have friends who've done this, a lot of times voice tracking is on today's Thursday, we're voice tracking for Saturday and Sunday, and off for the week. No, we are doing voice tracking scheduling. The announcers are scheduled to voice track their shift, their hours, each one just before they start. So the 4 o'clock person is doing their tracking at first half hour. For the second half hour, the programming directors we got to be in the moment, and it's been working. It's worked out very well, and I've got everyone using VPN. So all of their laptops we provided, we happen to have them from our pledge drive, so it worked out. Now the reason I did that, and a lot of folks said to me, "Oh, you could just let them use whatever laptop they have." No. As Bryan pointed out, if you're doing VPN, if you do a router to router, suddenly your entire family is on the network. You don't want that. I'm not doing router to router, but what I am doing is a workflow that I need to make sure is repeatable, reliable, and gets the job done. So if I provide the laptop, you have no reason to use it for anything else but for one thing: producing voice tracks and getting on the air. Your other laptops, computers in the house, that's your stuff. Do what you want with it. I don't care. That way, there's no confusion. If you're sharing a box, a computer for everything you're trying to do during this event, you will be riddled with issues, and it'll just be a mess. So far, I have to say we've got 20 off-site connections coming and going, and laptops that we issued, and working just fine. Nobody has a problem. Last minute, we got 2 people who are covering for vacation for other announcers. All they do is log in, drop in their voice track, make sure everything's in order, the music they select, they work on it, boom, they go. And we're moving to another level of automation through DJB in the months to come that will allow me to do some live inserts and still voice track and make it a mix of in the moment, at the moment, and wow, we could be on location doing stuff. And it'll all be through VPN connections. We have a open VPN setup that we use for most of our facility, and I'm using some other third-party VPN links. Again, the workflow is the announcer needs to be able to click a mouse icon, connects to the computer. Oh, by the way, the automation computer is at the transmitter site. And in order for us to do PPM encoding and everything else we're doing, that audio goes down our T1 to the studios, gets turned around and comes back up to the transmitter, off on the stream, web stream, off FM and HD2. So literally our entire audio workflow and signal path is identical as if we were operating here in the studios. So all the encoding, everything we normally do is going through all the usual switching systems. So actually for us, nothing's changed. If I need to move a studio, I just press a button, move it to another place. They remote in, they do their thing. Audio appears where it should be. So it's worked out. I do get to sleep past midnight.
I hadn't realized that your audio from the automation was leaving and going down a T1 to the studio for PPM encoding and then back to the transmitter. Okay. And
right.
on the one hand,
if I have to move PPM encoding, do you know what's involved moving all those chassis? Try and do that in a short order. Yeah, not happening. Yeah. So I said, hey, wait a minute. I got robust links. Facility is functional. I have backup power. I got everything I need. Send it down. Bring it back. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
And I could also originate at the site.
You could yes, and you could originate at the studio if you wanted to. I suppose if you had to, you could if you lost the T1 or something happened to the studio building, you could just go automation to air, but then you wouldn't have PPM, and that's pretty important in New York City.
Well, yeah, for that short time. But for us, and the way we use PPM very differently than, say, when I was at Winds, we'd be okay for a short outage. But yeah, I have the ability to switch audio anywhere I want within the path, whether it be local to the transmitter site, the studios. And yes, we have had public affairs shows we've put on. We have 2 twice a month. And all we have to do is go to the rack room. When it comes time for the talk show to go on the air, select local connection, insert. Yeah. And the T1 switches to the studio. We switch back.
Gotcha.
And PPM encoding continues on its merry way.
Gotcha. Wow.
It works.
All right. Hey, we're gonna take just a minute right now, and Bryan, let's put a point on one thing, and that was talking about something like the Telos VSET. It looks like a phone, but it controls the Telos VX talk show system. Very popular item, and that's one reason why I bring it up. And some years ago, a major network had a radio program that got produced in 3 different locations around the country, all working together at the same time. The network headquarters was in the far Northeast. The talent was in the Carolinas, and the show producer was off in, I don't know, Arkansas or Texas, Alabama. And they needed Telos VSET controllers at each location. And the way they got that done was, as they had the IT chops to do it, they simply put each location on the same network using VPN as the system at the studio in the far Northeast, and it all thought it was on the same network, and so it all worked without a lot of further muss and fuss, no port forwarding, things like that, because they nailed up VPN amongst these sites. That's certainly one way. That's one way to get a VSET, which uses a number of different connections on. Are there any other practical ways to do that, or is a VPN really the way to go to get a remote VSET on the same network?
The VPN is a great way to get there, and I'll see if I can show you why. If I switch to this other screen, you can see it right there in the split screen.
Oh yeah,
right. So we've been asked these questions. How do I remotely broadcast things? Right. Well, if you look, this is just a list of TCP and UDP ports that many of our Telos products use. Right. So Omnias, VSETs, but you can see the list is quite extensive. Right. There are a lot of ports that different that different products use. So to just do port forwarding for the one port that you're going to need, it's non-trivial, right? So the VPN really helps control some of that, because it's just gonna forward everything where you tell it. You don't have to know that, hey, the VSET's going to use port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for remote control, but the audio, it's going to be a crapshoot, because the audio is going to be on anywhere from port 62,000 to 62,512, right? So which one's it going to be on today? Well, you don't know, right?
And to me, that would be a port forwarding nightmare. Yeah.
Oh, it would.
Sorry, go ahead.
And plus, if you do port forwarding, you can only really port forward that port to one device.
Yeah.
So the nailed up VPN allows you to have multiple devices at the same location that can all use that same. But the nailed up VPN is more difficult than than just port forwarding the few ports that you might need. So, unfortunately, it's one of those things that we either didn't talk about, people didn't ask the right questions, or we didn't do a good enough job as a company of saying, hey, you should be prepared for this, because if this comes down, here's the kind of things that you're going to need to account for. So
we got just a minute to talk about this, and it's probably good that we have just a minute, because what we see as the future is more and more manufacturers, and I know you're seeing this now already from us and from us, Telos, because Bryan and I both work for Telos.
Yep.
We already have a number of products that can be fully controlled through a web browser without having Java and just having a port 80 connection. And we know how relatively easy it is to make those things secure. And so there's good facility there that we in the radio business don't have to invent. There's things that are out there that are common, that are safe and secure. But we already have facilities like, Bryan, our Pathfinder product, and Pathfinder, you can build fader panels and button panels. So you can run a console using faders and such from Pathfinder, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a little screenshot here that I can actually show you. What we hope to do is use standard, readily available protocols to allow these stations to be able to do what they need to do. In other words, let's not reinvent, right? The VSET is a good example, because it's very specific, right? It's a product that we built from the ground up. We control the ports that it uses, but it's not really an open protocol, right? How do you secure something like that? Well, if you're using HTML and just an HTTP connection, then we know how HTTPS works. It's already encrypted. I can already secure it. So just using our Pathfinder software, I have remote control of my console. You can sort of see it on the screen. I can see if I here, maybe a better illustration is, I'm going to just switch to this other screen where you can see me. That's not really good. Let's see if I can. I don't know that I can slide that over. I've got, because it's HTML, it's really platform agnostic. So that screen that you're seeing right there is also on an iPad. It would run on an Android phone. It would run on an Android tablet. And so using standard protocols, I can control my console. You see the sort of the red light turning on and off on the console there? That's because your picture's
mostly covering it up.
I know. Well, here, let me go back to full screen.
There you go.
Right. So now you can see that's actually changing. I'm changing it on the console. I'm not changing it on the web page, but that's just all HTML. There's no software to install. There's no software to download. So if I can securely expose that HTTPS port to either your VPN on your computer or to your nailed up VPN, I pretty much have full control over everything. And it really doesn't matter. Just a couple of quick things. I know we're sort of running out of time, but using HTML, I can also control my zip1. If I needed to connect my codec to you, well, I'll call the Telos test line, so I can see what's on my zip1, and if I want to call it, I can actually tell it's not actually calling it. That probably means that it's offline. But anyway, but that's just another HTML interface where I don't have to walk up to whatever device I'm trying to control and figure out how to control it. That HTML sort of abstracts the control layer, and now I'm only talking to a single device in my facility rather than having to, make a connection to every single device that I want to control. And so we're really trying hard to make those kind of tools available so that the next time a pandemic hits, maybe we're a little better prepared for it.
I see in the future more control being available via HTML through proper credentialing, or through VPN, or even through proxy servers, so that you give your employees access to the proxy server, and then the proxy server goes and talks to the individual devices. That can work for a large outfit. But these are all solutions. I want to. What I'm really trying to message at this point is my fellow engineers, that vendors are working on this. Telos Alliance certainly is working on this. And I should point, for years, we have had solutions that even can use HTML, like via Pathfinder. It's amazing what you can do remotely with Pathfinder, either with the older Pathfinder with installed apps, or by HTML browser control. You can do a lot of this stuff right now, but we're coming up with slicker and slicker ways to accomplish these things and let you broadcast remotely.
Anybody who's listening, if and I suspect this is not unique to just Telos Alliance, but anybody who's listening should be hearing what our customers are saying, and it's really made us rethink, the products that are important, and what's more important, a nice, pretty piece of hardware that you can put your fingers on, or is it more important that through, like you said, secure access, that we have the ability to be flexible in how we operate it, maybe to the point where we don't even have a console at all. Maybe it's not even hosted in the radio station. Maybe the console, and I'll put virtual quotes around the word console, maybe the console is hosted in an Amazon cloud. Maybe it's in Google, right? Who knows? Most broadcasters have said they're not quite ready to embrace cloud fully yet. But, at the same time, 15 years ago, they weren't ready to embrace audio over IP either. So sure. I think we'll be there, right? But virtualizing a lot of this stuff is becoming what people are asking for. Hey, I've got this nice, pretty console, but how do I remotely control it? How do I virtually control my console? So maybe there'll be a day when everything's virtual.
We are talking to Bryan Jones. He's a support specialist at the Telos Alliance. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Tobin, who's here too. And one of the real problems that you have, one of the things we depend on for all this to happen, is internet. And a lot of times, maybe you can only get one internet connection, like at a transmitter site, or at your studio, or at your house. Well, here's your second internet connection right here. This is from Max Connect Wireless. And actually, for many situations, this can be your primary internet connection. Kirk. What's that?
Nice transition. That was well done. I'll give you a 9.5 for that transition.
The Russian judge gives me a 9.5. Max Connect Wireless. Look, I know this looks like a 4G modem, because it is a 4G LTE modem. But it's more than that, because Max Connect Wireless is actually a service. It's a service where Max Connect has made agreements with AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, and in Canada with a player up there, where you actually get prioritized data. Your data you don't get lost packets like you do if you just have consumer 4G LTE. And you're in a busy place, your packets aren't guaranteed. Of course, TCP/IP usually covers this. But if you're doing UDP, you're sending live audio, you don't want dropped packets. And so that's the service you get with Max Connect Wireless. This works in all kinds of locations. By the way, if you try AT&T at a location that doesn't work well enough, you can get a Verizon SIM card, swap that out, talk to Josh Bone, and they'll swap that out for you. Max, this one, by the way, has both AT&T and Verizon SIM cards in it, and it's got fixed IP addresses from each of those carriers. So having a fixed IP address can make your life so much easier. It's a little bit difficult if you have a dynamic IP address and you're trying to send audio to it in a codec situation. This gives you a fixed IP address, guaranteed packet delivery, guaranteed priority over other users in the system, except for first responders. And it's just great. Hundreds and hundreds of these are now at transmitter sites and in radio station Go kits and at the homes of some of the air talent that maybe they just have DSL. That's all they can get. And it's not very good. Check it out. Max Connect Wireless. Go to the website, that's spelled funny, I know, maxconnectwireless.com and check it out. Really an awesome service. And thanks a lot to Max Connect for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Bryan, I'm going to hit you up in a minute for a tip of the week. But first, we're going to hit up Chris Tobin for a tip of the week because that man is always prepared. Chris, episode 499, what's your last tip of the week before we hit episode 500?
Last tip of the week will be, hey, revisit your workflow, understand all the pieces, and then look to see how you can enhance it with the fact that you're off-site and maybe who knows what conditions you're operating under. But I will say that we have been learning a lot at my facility and talking with a few of the announcers and others. We've got some good stuff coming down the pike. So in the fourth quarter of this year should be a lot of fun, and technology will help us make it. But workflow, the key is workflow. If you don't pay attention to that, you can buy the best whiz-bang box for $10,000 and still go off the air.
So I've got a tip, and it's obvious to some people, but as engineers, one of the things we like to do is solve problems ourselves. And you know what? We just can't be experts at everything. So right now at my radio stations, a different automation system is going into one of the stations that had a severe failure, and I wasn't able to fix it. And we hired somebody who is expert in this particular automation system to come and fix it up for us. And it's going really smoothly, really well, and it's going to be a good solution for that location. So my tip is don't be afraid to build your network, figure out who's good at what, and get them involved with work that you may need to have done. And of course, if they can show you how to do it, that's even better. But I as engineers, we tend to glom on to different areas of expertise. We can't be an expert at everything. And so I think it's just great to be able to call somebody in and have them pay them to do the work and have them show you what they've done. Bryan Jones, do you have a tip of the week for us?
Well, Chris kind of stole mine. I was gonna say something similar, but I'll dovetail in with what. So first of all, my tip of the week is catch episode 500 next week at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That's my tip of the week. Second would be, sort of in line with what both of you guys have said, is don't be afraid to try, new things and step outside the box. You can learn almost anything you want to learn on Google or YouTube. So if you don't know how to set up a MikroTik router to do port forwarding, I'll bet you there's a video on YouTube that will teach you how to do it.
There's hundreds of them, and they're mostly narrated by terrific IT engineers in India who have a little trouble with the English language. I've checked them out.
I do a lot of pause. Listen, click over to mine and do this pause, watch a little bit more. And I sort of try to find out how that can apply to me. So
thank goodness for the pause button, because I've fixed a washer and a dryer and caught the door on my BMW by hitting pause a lot. Well, what did he say? Let me back that up 10 seconds. Good points. Hey, I've enjoyed this, getting all this talked about. I feel like we've covered it well, and I feel like this is kind of an evergreen episode, that even though we're talking about COVID-19, a lot of the ideas here regarding VPN, port forwarding, and security are going to be good for a while. And I'm looking forward to more manufacturers coming out with more HTML browser-based interfaces. I know there's a lot of them out there already, and company we work for has got quite a few things already that do that, and we're just going to more and more to make broadcasting from home or remote sites even easier than it has been. So thanks a lot, Bryan, for coming on the show and bringing us these ideas and wisdom. Appreciate it.
No problem. Always a good time. I'm always surprised at how quickly things move. It's like this. We've been an hour and 10 minutes, and I still probably got another hour's worth of stuff we could talk about. So
always do.
Yes, exactly. Chris Tobin, thank you for joining us from the Performance Studio at WBGO. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Look forward to next week. See if I can come up with a great location so that Dan will be happy at Broadcast Bionics.
You are kind of the master of locations on this. on the show.
I have something in mind. I've got to test a few things out on Monday and Tuesday and see if it works. If it does, it'll be fun.
Yep. Cool. Good deal. Well, thanks for joining us. I want to thank Suncast, our producer. He is at the controls and made it. They had a big power outage at the studio in New York City and got everything up and running after that happened. So Suncast, I really appreciate your efforts there. Thanks also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, home of other fine podcasts. Please be sure that if you watch this on YouTube, that you like and subscribe to this channel. That's always helpful. Please feel welcome to make good comments in the comment section. We appreciate that. And anything? Oh, yeah. Stop by and see our sponsors. Go to angryaudio.com, check out bgs.cc and maxconnectwireless.com. Also, nautel.com, and check out their webinars and get registered for that coming up next week on Tuesday. We'll see you next week. Big show number 500 on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.